My secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
Hello and welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States at iba pa. My name is Ryan Carpio and I'm joined by my fellow hosts,
Joe Bernardo,
Elaine Delales,
and
Mike.
Producer Mike.
Elaine is on time.
You're ready this time.
I was ready.
We are. Oh, goodness. This Filipino American Life is recording in the city of
Chateau.
And for you non-Filipino Americans out there, it's Seattle, Washington. It's Seattle. We're in Seattle. And we are happy and honored to be recording at Hing Hai Co-work space.
Yeah, right. Got it.
I know I did. I
In
totally
the
got it.
International District.
In the International District. And we're joined by one of our friends, Joseph Guanlao. Oh, I got Joseph right.
No, you got it all right. You got it all right.
Did he get it right?
Welcome. Yeah, I got it right? Yeah,
You got it right. You got it right. Go on now.
Thanks for having us here and for being our sort of host and also like our guide in Seattle. And but I wanted to say first of all thank you. And I know we have a bunch of interviews lined up today.
Correct.
And so you guys will be hearing, and I'm thrilled. I'm excited. There's a bunch of folks who's going to talk about food,
Yes.
right? There's
Talk about history,
Um,
politics.
And food.
Politics,
Food.
and then food,
Yes.
So, your favorite subject?
food,
Food.
yeah,
And food.
So,
and food.
It's gonna be great. But real quick, do we have any voicemails or anything like that? No voicemails.
No voicemails.
No.
What? People step it up.
Way to read the pre.
Hey,
The
first of all,
Good prep work there,
pre-recording
Ryan.
notes.
I already knew that. I just wanted to give a chance for people to step it up. But I also wanted to give Joseph some time to say where we are and what this space is all about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well you were over here in Hing Hai Co-works, so you got my name right, but it's Hing Hai.
Hing Hai.
Well, actually, I don't know. That may also be an Americanization of some Chinese words.
Hing
But-
Hai. Sorry.
We're all wrong. That's what we're.
Yeah, we call this space Hing Hai for short, but Hing Hai Co-works. And so I work for the Preservation and Development Authority in the ID, and so we own and manage this building actually, and we developed this space. But that's why I'm here actually. I know Joe from college.
Yeah. Well, technically, I was in graduate school when he was in college.
I was an undergraduate, and he
Yeah.
was a
I like to think I'm as young as
PhD.
him, but no.
So, what is the dirt? What was Joe like in when you were undergrad?
I mean, I think we were all drunk back then, so we don't really. It's hard to remember, right?
So, you're saying Joseph bought you, Joseph, booze because he was older?
No.
No?
He was old enough by the time I
Yeah,
met him.
we were clinking glasses at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Good job not buying
I wasn't
underage.
looking for any mentorship or anything. I think maybe inadvertently I was, but
Nice.
But Joseph, I met through like mutual friends, and he was part of an artist collective here in Seattle called Makipag.
Oh yeah. That was a thing. Yeah,
that was a thing. And he's been here. You were born and raised here, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Seattle.
What part?
So I grew up in South Seattle, which is technically unincorporated King County, but or the area I was living in is called Skyway.
Yeah.
My parents are still there, so.
And then that's a large Filipino population down in Skyway, the south side of Seattle.
Yes.
Seattle has always had like a very strong Filipino presence.
Yeah, what brought your parents to Seattle?
Yeah.
Well, my dad joined the Navy.
Okay.
He was there for 5 years, got out. I mean, his best friend was like a lifer, right? So they were in Bremerton. Then he got out. Him and his brother came here through the Navy. And then my mom married my dad. But my mom was actually in Saudi. She was there, I think, for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So she always greets people that she identifies as Muslim with, assalamu alaikum.
Oh, because she was there for a while.
I grew
Yeah.
up knowing that.
What is everyone else's like background with Seattle? You want to share?
For
Who's
me-
been here?
Well, Joe, I know like you've been here for like grad school, and he's sort of experiencing with us. I think for the first time when Well, I guess you've seen a lot of changes, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I've visited Seattle in the past. I haven't really explored it as much as I wanted to. I've been basically playing tourist for Seattle, but I also like to say that the best clam chowder I ever had
Oh,
is
wow.
in Seattle. So it's in Seattle area.
Interesting.
And we haven't had any.
We haven't had any.
Was it at Soup Plantation?
So my experience is I have been here. I came up here like on spring break with some friends.
Spring break.
Spring break. I didn't do it. I really and I like, saw like the gift shop at the Experience Music Project and the gift shop of the Needle, but it found this history out. Seattle was my dad's port of entry when they immigrated to America.
Wow.
So they flew from the Philippines.
They're on the boat.
No, it's a plane, Joe. It was a plane.
Got
It was 80.
A plain-looking boat.
And they flew into Seattle. So it was my dad and my pregnant mom. And then they came to LA. And then I was born in a beautiful place called Sunny Sun Valley next to
Yes.
smokestacks
In the land of the oblongs.
in a tire yard. But yeah, Mike, what's your history with this place?
I came up here maybe when I was a kid because we were going to go visit family in Vancouver, and so we just dropped. We drove all the way from Oxnard up to like Vancouver and stopped in Seattle just to kind of check it out, and so did the whole Space Needle thing, all the other stuff, and it probably didn't come again until like I was like 2021 for the first API Spoken Word and Poetry Summit in college. Which is how I met some of our guests that we're going to have today.
Yeah.
Gio and Shara from Hood Famous Bake Shop. But ever since then, I mean, like 18 years later, I hadn't been back. And so, very kind of like tangential, kind of like just coming here, like either as a family trip or just kind of on a whim to kind of just be here. So this will be my first time. This is my first time really kind of just experiencing the city, kind of just to experience the city.
Nice.
So.
So, if you don't know, I went to actually school here, University of Washington in Seattle, and I lived here for 3 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has it changed a lot?
It's
from-
changed a whole lot, and yeah, I moved here in 2007. Moved back to LA in 2010, and so in the past 9 years, it's changed tremendously. There's just so much building. I think Seattle ranks number one as the most number of kind of construction projects
Makes sense.
in any kind of metropolitan
Really?
city in the U.S. because there's just so many changes, especially like the South Lake Union area, Capitol Hill, just everywhere actually. And there's a lot of, with that comes with lots of gentrification.
Yeah.
But yeah, just driving around, I just didn't recognize a lot of places.
Yeah.
we noticed. But I mean, in a good way, like in a good way, and maybe in a bad way too. But like, in a good way, in that we're kind of experiencing this together as part
Yeah.
of like, Filipino American history, or even
Yes.
just like our own history.
And I'm glad we got to go to the Rock Box, the karaoke joint that you talked about in the karaoke episode.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did talk about it as the best karaoke.
As the
joint
best
in the world.
and then we went there and we had the best time.
It was such a good time.
Joe had a great
Joe had a great time. If you check the Instagram from the when we were here, there's lots of video of us singing and Joe having fun.
Just ask him if he sang a week by SWV. Because he's not quite sure.
I don't remember, and you probably just lied to me, so I didn't
No,
sing
dude.
it at the end.
We
I
sang
distinctly
the
remember
song.
Ryan making an SWV joke
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
We did.
What
Yeah.
joke was that?
He pretended he was weak in the
sisters with
knees.
voices or
Oh
something.
yeah. And I kept saying the same joke over and over again because that's what I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Seattle. I love coming back up here. If I had to live in any other kind of city other than LA, it'd probably be Seattle.
For sure.
Wow.
And I think from just these interviews, what we've learned the most is that we have to come back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think also, it's a nice change of pace, even when it comes to like rain and not no one's going crazy. With a little bit of drizzle, like we're able to survive the drizzle of Seattle so far. And,
Yeah.
And
I haven't used my umbrella.
It's just a hoodie. I'm looking forward to like eating a lot of the good Seattle and Pacific Northwest food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In town. So
Thank you, Seattle.
Thank you, Seattle.
And I
So-
hope you enjoy these next round of interviews that we put out.
Right
Yes,
on.
you'll definitely enjoy them. Yo, what's a good thing to do on the Thursday night?
Television.
It's college nights, but not anymore.
Not anymore,
For me.
no. It's actually a cool night to listen to me and Ryan talk on Kumu.
That's right.
What? You're on Kumu?
Yes,
Yep.
sometimes. Actually, only twice.
Yeah.
But Kumu is a cool app that you should check out.
What happens on the app? What is Kumu?
It's a social live streaming app created for young Filipinos.
Hey, that's us. We're young. We're Filipinos.
Yeah, we're hip. We're hip. It's actually 82% millennial and Gen Z.
That's us.
That's us.
Is that us?
That's us 10 years before. 10 years before. But it's actually a really cool live streaming app created for Filipinos. They focus around community and live broadcasting technology. It allows users to connect in a raw and real environment. Live streamers are able to monetize in real time due to virtual gifts, which actually is real money to buy.
What?
Yeah.
So I can be on there and just be like, hey, give me money. I'll
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
Like
People
sing
can make
on-
money. And it's really great entertainment too. Like there's a lot of people who are on it, and you could just it's really
So
fun to.
If I'm
join.
on it just singing karaoke, people can give me money to.
There are people who do karaoke on that channel. Yes.
Joe and I don't do that. We usually talk about living life here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the only tech platform that prioritizes geolinguistic context beyond just English and Tagalog. So, for example, Bisaya, Ilocano, Ilonggo, Bicolano dialects are well represented on the Kumu app.
What about English?
Yeah. Obviously English, yes. Kumu has been downloaded in over 55 countries with over 8 million monthly app visits from 400,000 users. And it's a very safe, positive, and accepting place for Filipinos from three key segments of the population: overseas Filipinos, Filipinos in big provincial cities, and Filipinos in Metro Manila.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you have want to get in the know, you want to get into the coolest app available, download Kumu now. Welcome back, everybody.
Woohoo.
Thanks again for listening to us. We're live here in beautiful, rainy Seattle.
Yay.
Yes. Yes. My former hometown for about 3 years.
That's not really your home. It's your former home.
Former home, sorry. Former home for 3 years.
Joe has many hometowns.
I know. It's like, where were you born? How were you born?
How many
cities?
associations are you a part of?
That's why it's at vicinity.
So we are joined by Devin Cabanella and Dr. Pio Decano. Welcome,
Welcome
to this Filipino American
to
Life.
Filipino American Life.
Thanks for
Glad to be here.
having us here.
Yes, thank you
Short
so
time
much.
listener,
Short time.
long time fan.
We accept every listener.
Yeah.
Short time, long time.
Did you go to high school here?
No, I went to graduate school here, University of Washington.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of your hometowns.
Yeah. So Devin and Dr. Decano are longtime community leaders here in Seattle. And they're going to talk to us about our story and kind of the Filipino American history here.
We're really
in the Pacific
excited
Northwest.
since most of us have like a LA based like history, and like our knowledge base is very rooted there. So this is like us exploring other Filipino American communities in our country. So
I like
thank
California
you.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're neighbors, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, California and Hawaii are the only states in the Union that have October dedicated as Filipino American History Month.
Wow.
And Washington has that legislation pending, and hopefully it will pass with this session.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, we intentionally renewed it every year
That's smart.
so that we were constantly on the docket. But I think the
Yeah.
people who've been doing it said, let's just make it permanent.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no.
That's kind of odd to me because, this is where FAN
We started it.
Filipino American
Yeah.
National
Yeah.
Historical Society
Yeah.
was founded here by Uncle Fred Cordova and Auntie Dorothy
That's right.
Cordova.
That's right.
But yeah, it hasn't been kind of state instituted by the state legislature.
Yeah.
Well, it's
It will be. It will be.
Ray Pasqua and I, for the last 10 years, would go to different entities, from school districts to little towns to counties, and to approach them in September to have them declare Filipino American History Month at the local level. And he finally said, "We've been doing this for 10 years. Come on, let's."
Ray Pasqua is the president of FONS in Eastern Washington, Wapato, which is one of the oldest Ilocano towns that still exists.
Yeah, he's actually a national trustee. He took my place as a national trustee on the Filipino American Historical Society board.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you mean by it's an Ilocano town?
Wapato was a hub for just Ilocano people.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow. Like
And it's still,
Oh yeah.
you can still go there. And I've never even been to the Philippines, but I can go there and speak Ilocano to them still.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm not Ilocano, so I wouldn't if I were to go there, I wouldn't. Everybody would be speaking Ilocano, and I'd just be lost.
everyone would probably be Ilocano.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
But
cool.
just
But that's like
historically.
Hawaii though too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hawaii, majority
Very
of the
much.
Filipinos are Ilocano.
Well, the response when somebody asked me, "Are you Filipino?" and I said, "No, I'm Ilocano."
There is a difference.
FBI. Full-blooded
Yeah,
Ilocano.
the FBI.
I have never heard that before.
You never heard
Joe.
that?
No.
No, I've seen T-shirts.
I'm not
that
gonna say it.
that.
I'm sure there's a shirt.
I'm sure it's a shirt, but I've never heard
That
that.
is just awesome.
Yeah.
You need to go shopping more.
Apparently.
Can I ask a quick question about the whole legislation? What do you think? Is it just political will? Is there why it's taken?
I mean, Ray told me he intentionally would redo it every year at the state and city level, so to maintain constant awareness.
Right.
Makes
Whereas if you made it permanent,
I
then
see.
it just gets skipped over without attention.
I see what you mean. Got it.
So he's maintaining constant attention to it. And, he's old, and then Ray's old, so they're just like, we don't want to do it anymore.
I'd get this call from Ray, and he'd say, "P.O., what are you doing?"
But literally, they would go to the town 10 miles away. Would you like to do Filipino History Month? Then the next city council, then the next city council through the whole state.
I wouldn't even know some of the places I had, where we
Yeah.
were going. It was just Prosser, Bremerton. Bremerton I knew about, but
Yeah.
Prosser's, the mayor of Prosser, what I found out was infantry officer in the Philippines, and they've got a jeepney there in Prosser.
Oh, yeah.
Real smart.
Yeah. Anywhere there was a Filipino connection, they would go.
That's amazing. Is the jeepney still there?
Apparently so, yeah.
Whoa, that's
I
cool.
believe there's 8 jeepneys in the United States.
And that's one of them.
and yeah, that's one of them.
That would
Yeah.
be a cool story, actually.
Yeah.
Just follow the jeepneys and
Follow the jeepney.
Follow all 8? Yeah.
And I'm not talking about any jeepney store or grill where they sell
You mean the actual car?
And
jeepney.
did you know we have a little jeepney restaurant on Capitol
Yeah.
Hill?
Yeah.
You guys
Yes.
go there?
We're gonna try.
It's a
and go
late
there,
night
yeah.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, speaking of Filipino American history, we want to get to know your history. So, where did you grow up, and how did you kind of come to Seattle?
Right across the street, I grew up running I was born and raised in Seattle, 1939, in a hospital that no longer exists.
and we're in the international district right now.
Yeah, International. And
Filipino
my
town.
dad was enumerated in the 1920 census at a place right down. It was called the International Apartments, and I went and looked at the 1920 census, and truly international. It was truly, there were individuals there from all over the world, and that was one of the leverage points, though, for renaming. Adding the name International to the Chinatown. That was really critical.
Because there's just more than one group that was always
More than
here.
one group. And I always had to remind individuals and groups that this land was originally taken from native peoples. And so, as was the majority of the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, another distinct thing about Filipino Americans in Seattle is there are lots of what we call Indopinos
Yeah.
in Seattle. And I think that's a term we only use here.
What is Indopino?
Indopinos are Native American Filipinos because there were so many Filipino guys. They married native gals. So obviously it used to be Indian Filipino. Now they
Yeah.
call themselves Indigenous Filipino.
If you want to go back,
So-
back to the 1500s, Filipino males were interacting with native females when they first arrived aboard those Spanish galleons.
Yeah.
And so they would leave the ship, decide life was better here, and intermarry with the local inhabitants. And then that's one of the reasons they crossed the peninsula, and then they ended up in New Orleans and established that Filipino
In St. Malo.
in New Orleans in the swamps, nipa huts. So you're aware of that.
Yeah, the last person from New Orleans who tried to talk to me, I didn't know what they were saying because their Cajun was so thick. But yeah, Pio's family, his dad brought one of my first relatives here in, I think, 29. And then after that, it's like really classic, they call it chain migration now. Like, then after he brought his nephew, then that nephew, my uncle, brought my aunt, then her parents, my grandparents, then all the rest of us came. So, but yeah, a bunch of them came here in the 65, and we lived in the Central District, which was also a Filipino neighborhood. And then I went to the elementary school, which is closest to the International District, like 4 blocks away from here.
Did you run the streets with?
Well, I lived in Bailey Gatzert. I went to Bailey
You
Gatzert.
went to Bailey Gatzert?
Yeah, and then I would-
You ran with some thugs there.
And then we would, but yeah, my
a
parents
hood,
would let
then.
me walk from the first or Cherry Hill all the way down here because I'd go and play video games here. But yeah, I had no problem calling it Chinatown. But by the time I was a kid, Filipino business had slowed down here because I think Filipino business tapered off in the 70s.
Well, the economic reality is that the Chinese community control the economic system down here, and the small businesses were the core of their economic base, and and for that reason, it was really difficult to bring the notion of internationalness to.
Yeah, they wanted to.
It was really tough.
They're losing their brand name,
Yep.
basically. But yeah, this building we're in was a Filipino building. This street that's right outside the windows from us, this was a Filipino street. This whole block where the park is at, that was all Filipino stuff. One of my uncles ran a mission on this corner. Then his dad ran
Burgess
his
Lodge.
fraternal house.
Yeah. Burgess Lodge,
So yeah, all the fraternal Filipino organizations were here. And yeah, it's all right outside on where we're standing. So.
Briefly, I went to school here in high school, Garfield High School.
Oh, yeah.
And I ran the streets hard with all kinds of, it was an international gang that we had in 23rd Avenue, Pinoy.
Wow. So he's flashing a gang sign.
He put up.
Can you do that
Put his
again?
thumb and forefinger and spread the others on his chest.
I'm like, can we take a picture of you flashing that afterwards? Oh, Mike's in.
Yeah, it's a lot. But wait.
But I learned a lot of, you're running the streets with what is, in my opinion, is one of the most oppressed groups. I mean, all individuals of color who are non-white were subject to all kinds of stuff. But I ran the streets hard with African Americans, then Chinese, Japanese, Indopinos, Native peoples.
But we were all forced to live in the same place.
Yeah,
So that's so literally within a 5-block area, all the groups that were not white were just all in the same
Yeah,
5-block area.
The school I went to, it was always looked at in the 50s. The newspaper, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, when it was being published, they would say, "Oh, look at Garfield High School. That's a showcase of democracy and integration." That was bullshit.
Well, it's still that way now. It's
Well,
considered two schools.
well,
There's
the
a white
reality-
school and a black school.
Well, the reality is the Madison Park upper class elite kids. There was unspoken rule. You couldn't cross the color line. And everybody. And you heard of the term creeping?
Yeah.
People were creeping. And when you were creeping, you were crossing the color line.
But what's creeping?
Oh.
Yep.
Where you're trying to flirt with.
Well, you're just actually. I knew of kids that would go to the prom. You'd have a white guy pick up the date, and then he'd drop them off and with a black guy, and they'd go to the prom together.
Oh.
That was called creeping. Yeah, that was a reality. And
Were there miscegenation laws at the time?
there
No,
weren't.
but it was just
no.
It was
just
just like it was just like
That's how
it was just racism.
Yeah.
But creeping, I bring that up. I belong to a called Claude's Breakfast Club. Guys I went to high school with, and
Club of
mostly
Creepers.
black kids and black gentlemen now, and we all managed to make it through the economic system in some fashion. And they, when I bring that term up, we all just laugh. We just laugh like. But going back to my high school, I went to public school for elementary. I should have brought my elementary school.
But I left the hood just to say I spent half my time in the hood, and then I went to the suburbs for a little bit. But now I'm back.
There's nothing wrong with the hood.
So I'm half hood. I'm only just to be clear. Just to be clear.
Where did you end up going?
Well, I grew up the other half of my childhood in Linwood, which is a suburb here.
Yeah, but growing up there, you probably had to get your cognitive skills up, and your ability to just kind of turn the other, say, oh, that was a bunch of bullshit. I'm not going to, But
It was the first time I saw kids playing in the park when I went to Linwood. I was like, oh my God, there's a baseball field and they're playing in it, baseball.
Yeah.
That's not the street.
The first time, and I'm like dead serious. I remember driving through the park thinking, they are playing in their park.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't play in, because I grew
I
up
played on the street
next to Yesler,
Yeah.
because my Aunt Mercy's house is right off Yesler. You wouldn't play in the park off Yesler and 20th. Like,
Why wouldn't you play in the park?
because it's just crackheads.
Yeah.
Oh.
During the crack era.
Yeah.
In the 70s and 80s?
Yeah. So
Anyway, I went to school and with 50s. I went to UW.
University of Washington.
UW,
for folks.
bachelor's and master's. I got a bachelor's in Spanish because I was stationed in South America. And
Where in South America?
American Embassy, Lima, Peru.
Oh.
Had a really nice.
Yeah.
When I went through my last interview at the State Department and the Marine Corps after embassy school, toward the end of embassy school, they asked if would I be able to manage handling all the paperwork of all the Marine Guards in South Central America and Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And you'll be working in an office with a major and a first sergeant. And I said, all I got to do is take care of their paperwork. They said, yep. And so that's what I did.
Wow.
And I also stood watch whenever any of the other Marine Guards were on left for vacation or were sick or whatever the case.
So you got
was.
your BA in Spanish, and then what was your master's degree in?
Counseling psychology.
Counseling psychology.
Yeah, and then, by my reckoning, I went to Wazoo and got my PhD in '76. And by my reckoning, I was one of the real early pioneer Filipino Americans to get a PhD. from
What's your
Washington State.
PhD in?
Community college education.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What was your dissertation on?
I developed a self-study model for a community college consortia.
Is that still available on JSTOR or anything? Can I look that up?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I work in education now at UCLA. So I'm a counselor, a graduate advisor currently for graduate students in
That's great.
a methods
Jeez.
area and another division called human development and psychology. So this is I'm like, oh, community college. Like, I will probably look this up on JSTOR later.
And I think Devin will support this, but what we learned in the 70s and it carried on into our activism was the notion of coalition building between ethnic groups.
Yeah.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And that's that's why we were able to build the Danny Wu Park under Bob Santos's leadership.
And we're in a coalition office right now, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is a nonprofit.
It was Chicano brothers and sisters that walked my papers through the academic community, PhD acceptance.
And it was
committee.
a community college consortium out here in Washington.
Yeah,
that
it
was where you
called.
studied.
It was the Puget Sound Regional Minority Affairs Consortium. All the minority affairs directors in the 13 community colleges, we get together and how could we improve not only people of color, but the community college experience for returning vets. I was focused in on
veterans.
that, veterans, returning veterans, returning housewives. How could we strengthen the programs in prisons?
Okay.
For both, women. First time I'd ever been to women's prison, and whoa, but was all part of the coalition building from the 70s and the 80s.
We would call those multicultural offices now, right?
Yeah.
So like
those
cross-cultural
exist-
centers or something like that.
Did those exist before? Did a minority office exist before this?
No, that was.
So you started multicultural offices in colleges?
We
basically.
planted the seed, but there were some forward-looking presidents of community colleges who I interacted with. As a matter of fact, they formed the foundation for being the individuals who looked at my dissertation and legitimized
I'm curious as to like how many other individuals have cited your work in their own like.
I'm sure a lot. Yeah.
Well,
If I Google you, I just find a court case against you.
Wait, what is that about? What is the court case about?
Maybe we can talk about it later. Yeah. But, I've always noticed, since coming to Seattle that, multi-ethnic coalitions are so strong here in Seattle, compared to, especially in California. What is it about Seattle that kind of breeds a lot of multi-ethnic coalition building work?
I think it's the nature of segregation here is different, and then
That's a good point.
the density of Filipinos is different. Because when you go to Hawaii or California, you have lots of Filipinos. Even though our political presence may seem bigger, our population is smaller, so it forces us to interact with others more.
yes, but as a statistical matter, Washington State has the third largest Filipino American population in the United States. So, it's keeping in step with that. And also the governor, Inslee, whose father, by the way, was my high school biology teacher.
Random. Wow.
Yeah. He understood, and he imparted that whole sense of community well-being through community action to his son, Jay. And
Who's the governor now?
who's the governor of the state of Washington. But his father, when I was at Garfield High School, I was late for biology classes. It was the first period of every morning, but I was taking my mom up to Boeing to work in the plant up there, and hers is another story. He knows about that. Hers is another story. But Frank Inslee took me aside, the biology teacher, and says, P.O., what's going on in your life? You've been late. You're not doing well in the class. You got to be doing a lot better, I told him I had to take my mom up to Boeing so she could get to work and keep the family, financially alive. And he gave me a gift C. He didn't have to.
For grades.
Yeah, he just for grades because biology was a required course, high school science course.
Yeah.
So I just, like I say, he passed that legacy on to his son, and that's one of the reasons we get,
And then, I didn't tell you this, but my social justice professor is Professor Inslee, who's his name's Forrest Inslee. So
Wow.
so yeah, but that's just interesting that two different Insleys have been our mentors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was my social justice
That's
professor.
great.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. That is just.
But the other thing too is that relationship between different communities. That color barrier was a little thinner here, and I think when you have a larger population of different people of color, those barriers are thicker. So that's just how I feel. I don't know what the sociology behind it is.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And then also, like, the other thing is, our second generation Filipino Americans are older than other areas. Because if you look at
that's true.
Pio, he's his experience and sophistication developed over a longer period of time. Here. And then the I can borrow from that a little bit easier than others.
You know who it really influenced my outlook and in some ways my behavior, but my ability to deal with problems were the old Manongs that I worked in Alaska with as an Alascaro back in the 50s. Because I was a teenager then, and I was just, beginning to understand the discrimination that they faced and the tough economic times that they had to
What
go
is
through.
for like the layperson? What is an Alascaro?
Those of us that worked in Alaska in the 50s and 60s. Oh, well.
In the Canada.
even
matter of fact,
before that.
The 30s, the
Yeah.
30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, 70s.
It's all that Filipinos
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they would, and my family, where I grew up in the Central District, we ran a boarding house for Alaskan-bound Filipinos. So every week, I would have a new uncle at my house in one of our rooms because we had a big old Victorian house, and a new uncle would show up. I'd be nice, do some kind of childhood trick, and then I got $5.
Yes.
Yeah.
So somebody's giving me money. But that was the one thing I understood from a young age is they're single guys that are traveling, and they stayed at our house. And the connection by why we got so many Filipinos at our house here in Seattle was because my grandpa's nephew lived in Delano, California.
Yes.
So if
Yeah,
if
that's
you were a
critical,
farm
yeah.
worker in Delano, they would field up here through one of my uncles and send them here to Seattle. Say, go to my uncle's house in Seattle on 17th Avenue, and then after that they would go to Alaska. So the other reason why we have a good political outlook could also be regionally we were a hub as well. And then also, if he's learning from the Manongs, the other thing that I think about is the sense of democracy and nationalism was different during the 30s because they're very pro-America versus Filipino affinity today would be pro-Philippines.
Yeah.
So the nature of what probably Pio was learning was be as American as you can be.
Yeah, lose your language.
I mean, we
That's
have
basically
What was that
it.
again?
Lose your language.
Lugian language.
Just lose it.
language.
Lose your language.
Yeah. Don't speak that. Don't you learn that Tagalog?
Yeah.
Ilocano, for Christ's sake.
They want you. So that's interesting that is what your experience was in the 30s or in the 50s, because
40s.
40s.
Yeah.
Because for us, for many of us, that was our experience in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's been the immigrant mindset, whatever generation, to just not acclimate but assimilate. To the
Assimilate.
point that you lose
Yeah,
everything.
well, assimilation, and one of the things that I wish I had done more of it, but on reflection, as I'm, after I retired, I would have told immigrant families, whatever you do, learn English well, and keep your home language. Absolutely, do not lose your home language. It's so critical. Language is culture.
Oh yeah.
Language is culture.
I'm glad I kept up knowing Ilocano okay.
Look at,
And I can have a decent conversation, but it's interesting now Seattle, the population's jumping and our diversity is actually going down. So my son who's with me is actually 5th generation Filipino American. I had to move him to an international school across the water so that he would have a more diverse experience. Because Bailey Gatzert, that's up the street, it's still a school of color, but the neighborhoods are now white. The person who owns my family's boarding house
Gentrified.
is a Google executive.
Oh, wow.
Because those are the only, so for the gentrification here has blown up. Not as hard as San Francisco, but
But it's pretty comparable, yeah.
yeah.
So they have a long history, a rich history of kind of of organizing with like the local 37, which helped organize a lot of the Alaskan cannery workers. Correct?
I don't. No, I don't. I wasn't an activist with respect to. I do know there was a lot of
Money handling.
money handling, and if you paid the foreman, this is just it was never.
But tell them what your
documented.
dad's job was. What was your dad's business?
My dad's business was providing labor to the Alaskan salmon canneries, and at one point, from my understanding, he was providing the majority of labor going up to Alaska.
So if you had to get a job, you had to go talk to his dad.
Yeah.
That's a big
Who-
connection right there.
Well, it was, but he, as far as I know, he never received any money. Although foremen that worked down the dispatch hall received the money for for allowing individuals who had never been to Alaska to go up to Alaska. Of course, I was a son of the labor contractor.
Yeah.
That's what he was called, the labor contractor.
But the big disputes that happened politically later in the 70s and 80s were a result of that sort of manong system of giving tribute to somebody to get a job.
Yeah, how my dad made his money, from my understanding after talking with him, is that he would sign a contract with say, for instance, Alaska Packers Association or owners of a cannery, and they would say, if we get, you have provide us this amount of labor, and if we get over 50,000, if we pack over 50,000 cases of salmon, you will get an additional, besides a contract you sign, you will get a nickel a case.
So he'd get a volume bonus.
Yeah, he'd get a volume bonus. That was the way he made his money. But the word of mouth that went around Santa Maria and other places in the Philippines with respect to getting jobs was really what fostered his ability to bring individuals to this country. And the word got around. If you go to the States, you can get a job in Alaska to begin with. That's important if you're going to make that big step.
Yeah.
And you don't want to stop off in Hawaii and work in the pineapple fields. That's exactly what he did.
How long did he do that for?
He lost a lot of money through bad investments. He learned. He was, I would say, to be frank, he was a borderline alcoholic. Although I'll never forget that he stopped drinking from one day to the next. I mean, it was an amazing thing that he did. But he lost all his money by the time at the beginning of the 60s, he was losing his money.
So from the 20s to the 60s.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, because like when we talk about a lot of like the Alascaros and the Manongs and the farm workers, the reference point is that it's history, that it is something that has passed. But I know from like my own personal experience, I had a friend in high school or elementary school, like someone I knew from elementary and high school, like their dad went to the canneries when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So it's not,
Continues to
it's a
this day,
continues
yeah.
to this day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
just for
Absolutely.
history
Yeah.
books. So I'm always curious, like, who then is recruiting people now to do this labor?
My read on that is just for the few individuals I've known that talked about it, is that the families inform, why don't you go to Alaska? And then
It's like word of mouth
Yeah,
through
word of
Filipino
mouth.
family. It's still the
Yeah.
same.
But the other thing that's
but I
really
don't think
amazing.
labor contracting is quote unquote legal any longer.
yeah.
Yeah. What I think is really amazing is even you, as a child of the labor person, also went up to Alaska. And then your cousin Jerry also went to Alaska during the 70s even. And then even my dad during the 80s also wanted to go to Alaska.
Is it a
it's-
rite of passage for Filipinos in this
it's
area?
weird. And then there's a class difference to it too.
Okay.
I think a lot of Filipinos may not know that it's going on because new Filipinos may be of a different
That's very
class
you're
level
absolute-
because
you're absolutely right.
it's
It's a
different.
blue collar job.
It's lower than blue collar job. It's a blood collar job because
that's
you're
a
just
interesting
playing with
opinion.
fish and guts every day. So
Well, maybe the production procedures have changed, but it's still you got to get down and do some dirty work.
But yeah, even there, we still have canneries here in Seattle, and unfortunately, even my own uncle 10 years ago had a stroke from working overtime in the canneries. And then because the deal at the canneries, they'll let you go overtime until you actually pass out, which is what happened to my uncle. He just go overtime. And so
Are they not unionized, the workers?
Oh yeah,
they are,
yeah.
but it's still easy to exploit people when you offer them money.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's a way to get money. But it's still happening.
So I wanted to talk about this issue before we end this interview. But can you tell us about the whole kind of Filipino town / international district dispute
I'll
that's
kick it
going
off.
on here?
Yeah, I got.
Oh, by the way, I was going to ask you, did they? One of the things that we initially, I was on the committee, and he's kind of taken that position, but I was on the original committee for the Hinghe Park.
Our big Chinatown Park here, International District Park.
and they're doing some additions, and the new gate was something that we passed. But the notion, and this is one of the things I really fought for and said, you've got to include in their signage language.
All the languages
all
of the people from
languages
the area.
that were ever utilized, and so they even had a Salish, didn't they? Didn't they?
We
get some-
added in.
Wait, hold on. Before we go there, can we talk about just the background of this whole issue?
Yeah. So the Filipino town thing happened. I was actually working in an office, and the backdrop for this is gentrification. Actually, there was a very important piece of legislation going through the city, and it was: are you going to raise the building levels in the city, and how is that going to affect the International District Chinatown? And in the preamble for that, it recognizes the different historical groups. And I was told when I came into work, did you hear that they wrote out Filipino, or they struck out Filipino Town from the legislation today? And I was like, no. I was like,
So
why
it was
would you do
written,
that?
And then they struck it out.
It was the only amendment they made for that session. And after that, I asked, what's that about? But again, it falls back to there are Chinese organizations who don't want to lose their brand for the area.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and it's just not historically true.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, our allies for that were basically it was like local Filipinos, the Vietnamese, and our drag queens. Those were our allies.
But let me give you some other additional information. I was the ad hoc chairperson of the COCA. This is back in the 70s, Coalition of Concerned Asians, and the governor at that time appointed a trustee to the Seattle Community College, Seattle Central Community College, and several of the Asian, in particular Chinese, that I talk with, the appointment that the governor made was somebody from the Zhonghua Chinese organization, and check me if you have different information, but this individual was very pro-Chinese, and it was, it is a very pro-Chinese organization. There were several young Chinese activists that I met with that said, this individual doesn't represent us. She doesn't represent us. And so we got together, we talked, we hashed about it, and got a coalition of concerned Asians, which was just an ad hoc committee. I was the ad hoc chair, and we started negotiations with the governor to establish a commission on Asian Pacific American interests. And they said, well, why are you doing that? We said, there's a Black commission, Native American commission, Chicano commission. We would like to see an Asian American coalition or commission. And we were successful in our efforts. It took us a little while to do. And we were joined, and that's why I say this coalition building is so important. But we were successful in getting the commission started back in the 70s. And as a matter of fact, they're celebrating
their Sapphire anniversary next
Sapphire
week.
anniversary.
But I think the point to make that coalition so there's not one single Asian voice. And the problem with what happened during the legislation that started the Filipino town issue was they were following one councilman was following the lead of only 2 Chinese people, Chinese Americans. And when they said, oh, no, you should take that out, he just went along with it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's an irony is that Seattle is really big on trying to push their equity and anti-bias work.
That's
And it's
a good point.
Exactly
Good point.
what you did was a bias move from intra-Asian bias.
Yeah.
And just the white councilman had no idea that
Yeah.
this is an ethnic dispute that's a result of decades. And it sounds like a movie, but it was our coalition versus the Changhua.
Wow.
And there's just the Changhua Benevolent Society.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I thought that was really strange. The 2 proponents, one of them is a son of P.O.'s dad's friend, and both of their dads were friends. And this guy goes to the city council now and says, don't count the Filipinos. And I don't know how he can say that when your dad was best friends with Pio Decano's dad. So the Filipinos and Chinese were in bed together, and you're still trying to pretend that we weren't. But then after that, I assembled a coalition of different old politicians, local leaders, and we had to create a new legislation just to reverse what the amendment was. So we had to pass a new law just to reverse the amendment that was made for the housing law.
Can you give us a time frame of when the amendment was and when you did the new law?
It all took about a month and a half.
Okay.
And so we had to scramble really hard. And then Pio came to the first meeting, and then it kept on coming back again because someone wanted to build a Filipino historical landmark here. And then the same organization, the Changhua, they tried to shut that down. And this was a year later. And I keep on telling people, you cannot say that it's not true because now it is coded into the city.
Yeah.
The city has verified historical Filipino town is a component of the international district. And then the other thing that was wild was the person who runs the police community police group for the area. She came and visited me here at this office, and she said, "Can I please get your permission to not talk about Filipino history with the police department when we do sensitivity training with all the police?"
Wait, what?
Why?
Because the Changhua had pressured her, and they said, "Don't talk about them when you give the sensitivity training for police that work in the district." And she was asking me for permission
To not do it.
and I was like, "No, I'm not going to give you permission because I had to go to City Hall
Yeah.
and for weeks make it so that you can't do exactly what you're saying you want to do. But basically, they're bullying.
Yeah.
There are two people who are members of that association, and it's just a real back and forth because the association says they're not part of us, but they say we are part of them, and they just assert themselves. And my big key thing for Asian Americans in the district was these people keep getting by because they show up, and they're the only voice that shows up.
Yep.
Like the loudest, but they're the minority.
Exactly. And they show up for every little thing. All of us are concerned, but we don't show up. So all we need is for people to show up.
Well, Devin's insights are so much right on. I mean,
Your dad took a bullet for his dad.
well, he didn't take a bullet. My dad was the bodyguard of one of the richest or most influential people, Chinese in the area, and he was the bodyguard. And they were walking up the street right over here, and this individual walked past him, and he said, called out this individual's name, and both my dad and the individual turned around. The guy shot this individual. He had a silver bullet.
Oh, jeez.
In his, he had
silver coin.
dollar.
Oh,
Yeah.
it saved him?
It stopped the
wow.
bullet.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and he didn't shoot at my dad, but my dad was supposed to be the bodyguard. But at this one time, the daughter, her son, was the individual that. Well, we won't mention
The
any
guy-
names.
So is
the
this
guy from the-
benevolent association? Is
Yeah.
it like a tong that is
Exactly.
Zhonghua.
No, it is the master tongue of all the other tongues.
Yeah.
So it's the top of the umbrella.
Yeah.
Changhua is the top of the umbrella for all the other tongues in the area.
Now, just to give you a different perspective, but it's very. The reason my father became a labor contractor is he came up here from San Francisco, got the job working in Alaska. Somehow, the richest Chinese person in this, who was responsible for recruiting Chinese labor to the canneries, somehow identified my father as somebody that could be influential in bringing Filipinos to take the place of Chinese, because they were moving up the quote-unquote economic ladder, and they were no longer going there.
They weren't going there to do that
patterns,
work.
too.
Well, yeah, I think they were, but also they had their share of discrimination too, like the iron chink.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so they were getting, they were there before us, and they were getting forced out in their own way.
At any rate, this individual, his name was Gundip Young. He used his name on the hotel up here, the Milwaukee Hotel. Gundip Young took my dad under his wing, showed him the labor contracting business, said, "This is what you should do."
So it's not that there hasn't been collaboration between Chinese Americans and Filipino Americans. There always has been.
Yes.
It's just that
very
this.
specific,
It's just that this one Tong organization seems to have had it out.
They just want to be in denial about it.
Well, Devin's portrayal of the brand name is absolutely right on.
That is for decades. Even
Yes.
Bob Santos, who was our local
Yeah.
leader, they fight against him even today because he made International District part of the official name of the
Instead of
area.
just Chinatown.
Yeah.
Instead of just Chinatown.
International ID.
And International District is the name coined by Seattle from the 50s. So it even predates
Devin,
our effort.
He was really clever in doing that,
Yeah.
because we built this Danny Wu Park up here in the 70s. The Danny Wu Park was named for the place up here we used to drink after, carousing and doing crazy stuff.
About after gallivanting.
After gallivanting, and we named it after the owner of that restaurant we used to go to.
So you honored the dude who let you gallivant
Yeah.
by giving him a park.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
that whole park, Danny Wu Park. That's why we named it after Danny Wu. Curtis Wu, his son, is a policeman. Has he retired yet?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? What was I just talking about?
Well, we think we have like 5
What did I
minutes.
just say?
so-
Well, anyways, but yeah, the amount of Filipino stuff in the area, Like if you go to the opposite corner is the Carlos Bulusan Memorial.
At the Eastern Hotel, yeah.
If you go to the edge of the International District, where the International District starts is the Jose Rizal Bridge.
Yeah.
The whole bridge, which has one of the best views in the city,
Yeah.
is named after a Filipino person.
And the
Jose Rizal Park.
Jose Rizal Park.
and the Indian Health Center is right at the top, 12th Avenue.
12th Avenue.
Right, 12th Avenue.
It is
right
not
up-
Chinese. It's the Indian
It's
Health
in
Center.
the Indian Health Center.
And then luckily now we have Hood Famous Bakery.
Yeah.
I helped curate the images there that are all about the businesses that were in the
I
area.
was gonna ask a question about that. So,
yeah.
are those images are
all from here.
stock archival from this neighborhood then?
Everything you see there is from
Oh,
there.
nice.
So,
Yeah.
and then even the
like the picture of all those dudes like doing the Asian squat, and they're like,
well,
nice gear.
that's in a farm nearby. That's in a
Oh,
local
okay.
farm. But the guys playing pool is a Filipino Improvement Club, I think.
Yeah.
Oh God, that.
Did they have a pool? There's a pool image.
They had a
Yeah.
They had a Filipino Social Improvement Club. It's one of the things
Just
I
a
grew up.
gambling
Yeah,
place to
gambling
gamble and
joint.
hang
So is
out.
it still here or no?
I would totally
You
go
can
there.
walk
The
down
buildings
the
are still
steps.
here.
Yeah.
The building is there.
It's the coolest hipster name because it's not even what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
What is it called? Say it again.
The Filipino Social Improvement Club.
Socially improved by playing cards.
They did nothing to help old people or young people. It was you just went there to kick it.
You improved your wallet.
No, you go down there and get Chuck-a-Luck, 4, 5, 6.
What is Chuck-a-Luck?
Chuck-a-Luck is a dice game.
and 456 is a different dice
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. And you go down there, and my mom used to decry that these gambling places and some of the Alaska foremen actually
Would go there.
They'd run the
run the
gambling
place.
joints.
Oh, and they get a cut.
These foremen would get cut.
They get because they ran the house, and the house always
They
gets a
recruit
cut.
people to go there. and
They get
everything,
they get the house cut working in with the gambling in Alaska.
Do they still exist? Like, can I go to it?
No. But it's interesting. One of the things that I help push is more younger Filipinos want to learn how to play mahjong because they never learned.
I want to learn.
And we had a gambling history night for mahjong, and so
Does that mean it's just a gambling night?
it's just a place to play mahjong. We
to
don't
learn
even
how to play, too.
You learn how to play,
Yeah.
and then we also
What's the buy-in?
there is no buy-in. Like
Oh.
you just show up.
Well, it's
And
perfect. It's educational.
Central District Ice Cream, where you guys were. That's where we
Oh,
hold
yeah.
it. That's where we hold it. And then but yeah, I had a history night with him there, telling us all about the area. The other thing that's coming up as a result of the Filipino
When you
Town
teach them
Coalition,
how to play, are you teaching them how to like hold the tiles and like to feel what's underneath
we
without
put it
looking?
on the forehead and you feel it on the dome.
And you're like,
How do you dome feel it?
8 ball. No, I don't need
But
that.
but people like Central District Ice Cream, Hood Famous, they're reestablishing our presence
Yeah.
because Central District was a Filipino neighborhood, International District was a Filipino neighborhood,
Beacon
Then-
Hill too. Yeah.
Beacon Hill,
Yeah.
and then the new thing that there's been a small phrase that's been growing in Seattle. A crew of Filipino artists, they made a whole bunch, like 1,000 T-shirts that said "Filipino Town is real," just to raise awareness.
Yeah.
Where's
that-
this shirt? I want to buy one.
I'll Twitter the girl who does
Okay.
it to your Twitter.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we do have to cut it short, unfortunately. We
Okay.
could stay
Yeah.
here for hours
And
talk
talk to
about
you
all your
all.
stories.
It's my office. You can stay here as long as you want.
One quick question.
Yes.
Are any of you guys, or is there a local Filipino American looking to run for office or anything like that?
I don't know.
Or anybody being
'Cause I know
groomed?
David Della was a council member earlier, but
Yeah, he was.
any
curious.
any new person?
We had a gal named
Vilma
Bea. Her last name is Kay Bea. She tried to run for port commissioner under.
Yes, that's right.
Bring back our Sonics as part of her campaign because to becoming part of the port commissioner would allow for a new stadium. Coliseum to be
Yeah,
built
that's too
in
bad.
the area.
I gotta say, your city got done dirty about when they took the Sonics away.
Filipina American council member, Dolores
Sabanga.
Dolores Sabanga.
Yeah.
She would add a lot of. Well, gosh, used to
And her
work
mom
on-
ran a cafe here on the street,
yes.
King Street, where we're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could talk to you all for hours, but if I feel like we've learned so much.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we need to go.
Okay.
But thank you so much.
Yeah,
Awesome.
totally.
I know this is not going to, you have so much to do. One of these days, if you ever return I'd like to focus my comments on my mother. And I don't know if you heard of Artemio Riccardi.
Oh yeah, his mom was one of the first female workers at Boeing. Then also, we didn't cover it, his dad was the first Asian immigrant to own land in Washington, and he won that at the Supreme
So we
Court
just have
level.
to come
That
back.
was the Google thing. That was.
Well, you can Google Decano versus Washington. You'll
Yes.
find his dad.
Got it.
But you can also Google Decano versus Washington, and you'll find a court case where he's testifying against the government or something.
I guess we're gonna have to come back.
Yeah.
Part 2.
All right. Well, thank you so
guys.
much.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
You see this dead air right now, right in between the breaks, between the shows?
Just me breathing.
Well, we can actually fill this dead air with an ad. What? Yes. If you're a business out there or you want to promote an event or want to sponsor us, you can buy an ad right here in this space.
During this time,
Yes, that time.
Wow.
cool. What do they need to do?
All they need to do is email us at thisfilipinoamericanlife@gmail.com and just email us what you want to do.
Cool. So buy an ad.
Today.
Buy an ad.
Buy an ad. Buy an ad. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're back.
Are we?
Yes.
We are.
Aren't we?
We're in the front.
Great. And we have a special guest with us, continuing our Seattle tour. Could you please introduce yourselves?
We are Sendai Era. I'm Era, the vocalist of a hip hop group here in Seattle.
And I'm Sendai Mike. I'm the producer and mixing engineer.
Awesome. So now we have 2 producer mics in the room.
Did we
And-
have this before?
Oh,
where
shoot.
We had to
Wait.
What?
Wait.
What happened?
I didn't do it last time.
It's too late.
Is it too late?
Yeah.
No,
Pew, pew,
it's not.
Pew, pew.
Oh, my phone's on silent. Yeah, it is too late. I'm going to fuck with
But
it.
we had an instance before where we had 2 producer mics, didn't we? When we were in Vegas.
Oh,
I
we
think so.
did. Yeah, so it's always when we travel, we get 2 producer mics.
It's our lot in life being made by
But I'm really excited to talk to you all. Could you please share like what you all do?
Yeah. So right now we have this project. It's a storytelling project here in Seattle, but we focus on like mostly Filipinos, but like migrant experience and the diaspora folks. I'm traveling to this country, and we kind of meet up with folks. We create little short videos about a minute long that highlights a story that they want to share, and we create a song along with that too. And we just been doing that for the past few weeks.
You create a song, like an original song for each video?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my God.
So yeah, every Friday we meet up with somebody and sometimes we make the song beforehand. But we usually just pull up, we get to know them, we shoot the video, we go back to the studio, we make the song. Sometimes if they're an artist, we'll make the song with them. Then we edit the video, and then we put it out the following Wednesday.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Wait, so are you going to make a song about us?
We could.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Video recording this.
We could do that.
Oh my goodness.
This is exciting.
Wait, before like how did you guys get started? How did you guys meet? You know, what brought you together to decide to do something this creative?
Are you both from Seattle
Yeah.
too?
Actually, I was born in San Diego. My dad came through the Navy and then moved up and down the West Coast. Like I lived in Fallon, Nevada for a while, and then up in Oak Harbor, and then came here for school at the UW.
Yeah. I see.
A great school. Great school, by the way. It's FYI. University of Washington. Yourself, Mike?
Yeah, I grew up in Port Townsend. It's across the ferry from here and about an hour and a half north, real small town. And then I came out here for school at UW, and that's where we met, actually in the Civil and Environmental Engineering program.
Yeah.
Wow. You really are like Mike. Hey, Mike, what was your first major?
You mean the one that didn't finish?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah, electrical engineering.
Oh
yeah.
my God. Wait, but did you finish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at that.
And then I ended up with a Jamaican studies degree. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you kind of start collaborating together?
Yeah, we met during school. While we found out that he made music, and we kind of just gravitated to each other. I wrote to one of his songs, and after that, I think we just kept doing it, and it kind of evolved into this weekly thing, like in 2012.
Oh my god!
Wait, so were you just producing beats and then you heard it, or?
So around the time we met, around 2012, 2013, I was just making a lot of beats, doing the SoundCloud beat maker thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you just find the rappers when you do that. And and in the civil engineering program, there's not a lot of beat makers or rappers, so we it worked out, you know.
Wait, were you a civil engineering major as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my God, Mike! I'm just kidding. I like to point it out because Mike didn't finish.
Oh my goodness.
So, are you the most successful graduates of your program who are doing hip hop and video making?
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't checked in with.
Yeah, I haven't kept in
I'm
touch
going to
too
say
well.
that you are because I don't know anything better. So we'll just proclaim it.
So what do you look for in these stories? Like, what are you trying to capture when you're doing these minute videos?
It started off when we first started this. It started like short videos that we were doing for Filipino History Month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so we started off like highlighting Bulusan and the Katipunan, and we kind of like did these 1 minute shorts. And then we were like, what if we did like not just for Filipino History Month, but just like folks in our community?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we look for the stories is just, we kind of leave it up to the person, really. We want to highlight what's important to them at that time and how they want to express it. So there's some folks who are visual artists, some folks who are poets, some folks who are community organizers, so they want to highlight that. It kind of varies, but we want to like kind of capture what's like really meaningful for them. And some people also, their location is really important. The last one we did was around water, so we kind of went to the ocean for that. Mm-hmm. And then other places is like for some of the chefs, like the place where they cook or their homes. Yeah, kind of what they're wanting to share at that moment.
And what are some of the reactions from fans or people who follow?
It seems to be generally well received. It's what we've found is that it's hard to promote music, and we were music artists, and it's hard to ask people again and again to click a SoundCloud link, but it's very easy to get people excited about stuff, with the video content, and so it's been received very well by the people that have been following us.
What's your most popular video?
Probably one with our friend Gio or one of our other friends, Bamboo.
Boo.
Yeah.
Boo.
Bam's back in the mix of the
Boo.
So for those that don't know, Gio is actually here.
Don't mind him. We'll talk to him.
Munching away in the background. If you're wondering.
He's eating chicharron right now. So
It's delicious chicharron.
And who's Bamboo, Elaine?
Oh, he's this jerk. Who is Bamboo? You did a video about him. Why don't you tell the world?
Elaine's all mad.
I'm not mad.
No, he's the homie.
he's the homie, but Elaine hates him for some reason.
He knows.
She likes to be annoying older sister, younger sister.
I am way younger than him. Do not even say that I'm older than him. I'll punch you in the face. But yeah, tell us about Bev and your video and process with making it.
He's a Filipino LA artist who kind of reached out to us. He did this like short little run of shows. We got to hang out with him, and then while he was here in Seattle, we shot a video with him.
So
that was recently, right?
That was recent, right? You went on tour with him, right?
Yeah, in Oakland and LA, and then also here.
How was that?
That was really fun. Our first time performing out of state. It was awesome.
Yeah. What was it like performing in Oakland and LA? Like, what's the vibe, the crowd? Like, what's the difference between an Oakland and LA crowd and like a Washington crowd, a Seattle crowd?
Oakland actually reminded me a lot of here.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a lot more energy, though, in different ways. But definitely reminded me of Seattle. And then LA was dope. It's also kind of like a different vibe from here. I think we talked from folks who performed there. So in the beginning, like a lot of folks were just like really focused on what we were doing. So a lot of like kind of just looking at us, which we weren't used to in the very beginning. But I think
More of a theater type of crowd.
kind of like that, I guess. But I think after like maybe a few songs into the set, people got really into it, and then we were like easing into it. It was really dope.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of fans like in LA or like even Oakland? I mean, was this like kind of a new exposure for some folks that people knew who you were right away and like kind of flocked to kind of see you guys?
Not really. There's some folks in Oakland who knew us, and then not too many in LA. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it was just kind of like, who are these folks? And then
That's awesome.
yeah.
You got to.
That was at the Bootleg Theater.
Yeah,
right?
it was at the
Which
Bootleg.
is me and Elaine's
Yeah.
neighborhood, actually.
Oh.
That's in
Nice.
our backyard.
Literally.
I apologize that we weren't there. We were at a wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Also- That's good you were there.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next time.
We're usually at those shows because the Beat Rock fam will always borrow Mike's turntables.
Oh, I see.
Were my turntables there that night?
No, they were not
Okay.
there that night. Fatty knew to bring his own.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Was he at that wedding?
Was
Patrick?
no,
Oh, okay.
no.
Came to the show with like a tie, like halfway.
We were at a wedding in San Jose,
I know.
so it was nowhere near Los Angeles. But
But I mean, yeah, like in LA, like I think a lot of the folks in the hip hop scene kind of know each other, and I mean, we kind of like collaborate together. I mean, the reason that would even ask me for my turntables is because I used to run a DJ program, after school program for kids at this place called Search and Involve Filipino Americans, where DJ Patrick was one of the instructors. I think Gio might have come through sometimes. Bam was there a lot for
it
a
was
lot of
called
that.
Sessions LA.
Yeah, Sessions LA. And so I mean, like, there's kind of a community there. So what's the community like up here for artists, hip hop artists, even, folks like connected to kind of like the Asian American Filipino communities? What is that like here in Seattle?
For me, well, I'm a youth worker. I part of a group called Kabatan Alliance, and then there's a community center over here. So I run like elementary and middle school programs and high school. I think, what's it like? I think it might be similar to other cities. Like
I mean,
a
is
lot
it
of
big? Is there like kind of a big kind of scene here? Or is it just like a few folks have you known? all
with the
your lives?
Filipino American artists.
Yeah.
It's not huge. It's not very big. We find each other
Yeah.
in the space. I don't think we have like a scene, like a vibrant scene like maybe in California or in the Bay. But
With
we're
your
here.
youth work, are you is it just like is it after school programming? So what kind of work are you doing with those kids?
Yeah, it's after school programs. We do like history, a little bit of Tagalog, homework help.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that center here in the international district, or is it somewhere else in Seattle?
No, it's the Filipino Community Center.
Down
in South Seattle. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, we saw that on the train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So I mean, so is there a connection there though for working with the youth, working with the community, and your music and your art and things like that? Is there some connection there for you?
Yeah, I think that's like also like when we started the videos, it's how can we combine everything? How can we highlight organizers, workers, students in our music, but not just talk about it, like really have them the forefront of the music. And that's how, like, for me at least, I started to see like everything weaving together and in everything that we do. So like, and we just continue to meet folks that are in our neighborhood that are doing really good work with youth or in their schools.
And was there always that intentionality in your music and your art? I mean, was always like kind of the thought that it would be something that was kind of connected or grounded in community in some way?
Yeah, I've started really doing a lot more when I joined this group locally, Anakbay in Seattle, and the idea of cultural work, like shifting culture, changing it, and that it takes it's work to do that, and music plays a huge role. And so that's like always been a huge part. And I think where I found my voice, because I've always written, in notebooks, but never really shared. It wasn't until community organizers gave that space for me and empowered me to kind of say that, but then backed it up with our thousands, like hundreds of years of history in that. And so like when I say stuff, I feel like it's not like an isolated thing. It's like
It's all connected.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How about for you, Mike? Like, did you come into this at all, making beats and things like that, like with the idea that would be used kind of in these ways, or?
I Not particularly. I started making beats because I played drums, and then when I went to college, I couldn't bring my drum set, so it was for a long time.
I mean, the MPC or something, right?
Yeah, it was like a little drum machine sort of, but for a long time it was very isolated. A lot of just alone with the computer sort of time. But then, a lot of working with Rico helped sort of bring me out, meeting other artists, and Rico got me connected with WAPI, which is a community center down in the South End, and so I was teaching production to youth down there for a while, and that kind of moved me in a direction of sort of a producer in the more traditional sense of trying to empower artists to share their vision, because I'm not Filipino, but I feel really privileged to be able to work with Rico and somebody with such a strong vision.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sorry, Devin just walked in with a bunch of beers. So.
I mean, it's a good interruption.
I mean, we're not going to say no. So thank you.
No, so I mean, as you were saying, kind of like, as you kind of got into it and as you guys started working together, it kind of started connecting you with this idea. And so do you feel like even in your beat making and your production, like do you what do you utilize to kind of create your music? I mean, is it mostly sampling? Do you create like your own kind of, unique kind of, music or?
Oh man, I've been through all the different everything from sampling records, playing music, all the different MIDI stuff, all the different tools, different little synthesizers, and now we have services like Splice and for like pre-made loops, and it's just it's always evolving, and I'm always just trying to keep on. It's about the process, and I just like making beats, and I'm gonna keep doing it in whatever way comes around.
So I guess, how would you guys characterize your sound as it exists now? Like what? Awesome. And we'll probably host some of the music or share some music on when we post this episode. But I mean, what would you say it was at most akin to, or that you at least you try to kind of connect with in terms of stylistically and even just like
influences?
Yeah.
So Mike's asking what producers influence you, what beat makers influence you, what writers influence you.
Yeah.
From the production side, for the last, when we first started, I was just making beats by myself and then sending them to Rico, and then he would write, and then we would record. And as we moved on, it became what Rico was. He has his own ideas about the sounds he wants to rap over. So a lot of the production has been influenced by your listening preferences, and then we try to recreate that. And what would you say is some of the strong sort of like just musical influence that we've like recently?
Yeah, a lot of pop stuff right now, a lot of auto-tune things, like it's been really fun to create in that way, and kind of
Please share, because we're like, I'm not going to speak for the group, but I'm very out of it. So I would like to know, what are the pop stuff that I should be listening to?
He's talking about like NSYNC and
no, right?
To be honest,
pretty sure.
I've been listening to a lot of.
It's tearing up my. No, that's like when we were
pop.
young.
Oh shoot! All right. Sorry. More modern.
I mean, I've been listening to actually a lot of Latin music lately. So I've been listening to like Osuna or Bad Bunny or like Maluma and all these like other.
Joe and I are waiting for Ricky Martin. No? Okay.
Daniela Romo.
I was waiting for Selena. Sorry.
That too. I mean, that too. I mean, most recently that's happening. So if you hear like a little different like percussion or like the way that I'm using my syllables lately, that's like how it's coming.
That's cool.
Would you say there's a specific kind of sound that comes out of the Pacific Northwest?
Waves. No?
You're so dumb.
High five, dad joke.
Thanks.
I'm not
At least in terms of like the hip hop.
I'm not sure the city has ever found a consistent sound, and I think if there was any, it was these guys, Blue Scholars. That's sort of the thing that comes to my mind when I think of like Seattle hip hop and that sort of sound. But it's really all over the place. There's a lot of kind of like grittier trap, and then there's also a lot of like sort of more produced pop style hip hop and everything in between. And I don't think it's really hard to pin down a consistent sound regionally,
which is a good thing because you don't get pigeonholed or
Yeah, for sure.
So sorry.
I mean, do you feel like that's kind of rooted in kind of how this, Seattle kind of comes together just in general, kind of a mix of folks coming in through like immigration, through like itinerant labor, through like kind of all the different origin stories of what makes Seattle. Maybe that's kind of part of that too.
Totally. Yeah.
I was gonna say like we have a podcast medium, and I think what we have in common is this idea of like telling a story. We love the idea of like sharing stories. For us, I love storytelling. I think my dad is probably one of the best storytellers out there, and you guys have a storytelling kind of. You want to tell the story of folks through your art. Do you reach out to the people that you want to tell a story of? Do they reach out to you? Is it kind of like both? It goes both ways, or is there kind of like a more mission-based thing to your craft? But do you reach out to them, or do you find the ones that you're like, I want to do a story about that one?
Yeah,
how does it work?
I think in the beginning it was the people closest to us.
Yeah.
So like it was my sister first, and then
That's
my
awesome.
coworker, and
Nice.
then my coworker's friend, and like it kind of grew that way. And then it was basically like the folks that I would do community organizing with in the neighborhood that I was in were the first people in the videos. And as we kept going, it was like people we knew, some folks in the Filipino food movement, and then some folks who were other artists in the area. And also people do suggest folks. And there's been a couple of times like where we kind of asked like, who would you want to see in like the story posts in the IG
Who are they
area.
suggesting?
One of them was Melissa Miranda, who just
Nice.
Musang, right?
yeah, from Musang, and someone suggested, and we reached out. That was
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to how we got started with this. So we
Yeah.
got the people closest to us who wanted to tell a story of, and then as it grew, we meet you guys. right?
Yeah.
So
For-
that's
like,
awesome.
It's like you would start with your network of friends because it's like, they're all doing cool things and you just want to share that people are doing cool shit. And then you end up traveling to other cities and then we get to talk to you guys who are doing cool shit. So this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last thoughts? Thank you for doing this. I know it
Yeah.
is rather quick, but we've had a packed schedule. But any last questions, thoughts?
What are you guys working on next? I mean, is this something that you guys, it sounds like you've been doing for a little bit, for a while now, but I mean, what do you feel like is the next kind of like project for Sendai Era?
We're just trying to keep on moving with the videos. It's one a week, and it keeps us very busy. And we're just
Yeah.
trying to make them better.
Wait, well, how many total now is it then?
We're up to, I think we just did 20. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we did finish 21, not out yet.
We may have a bye week in a couple weeks, depending on how things shake out here. But the plan is to just keep making them and keep making them better, and eventually, make them longer so that they can be more powerful and we can get more. Because it's hard.
Yeah. No,
with the
for
1
sure.
minute to really get deep, but it's also the way we're able to keep them coming so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really love what you're doing with the storytelling and the like utilizing like making songs for folks and then really highlighting the people. So I thank you because I'm unfamiliar with the area. So like to see those stories being told is really great.
What's the toughest part of creating all that content, like week after week after week?
We only meet once a week. We meet once a week, and we have to get everything. Somehow we get it done with whatever hours we have. But I think that's the hardest part because we would love more time, but also have to work and other things and
Yeah.
balancing and
Yeah,
everything.
it's not like it. I mean, you have jobs and right, and like this
Yeah.
part of like your That's amazing that you guys can crank out one a week.
Yeah.
One a week. That's amazing.
We can
Yeah,
barely
we can
do
barely-
two a
yeah.
month. So
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's a heavy lift for us already. So we're just talking. I'm not making beats right now. I'm not producing I'm just recording. That is my production.
We have some pew 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 pew.
I mean, yeah, I missed it, but whatever.
But thank you very much for taking
And if you
time
want to
talk
plug, where can folks find you
Oh, yeah.
everywhere?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram, Sendai Era, YouTube, website as well.
Facebook. And we actually we haven't really announced it yet, but we just rolled out our Patreon.
Nice.
And
Nice.
all the songs that we make are going to be available to supporters of the Patreon, because right now they're not available for streaming or download outside the videos. So if anyone's interested, they can check that out.
There you
Cool.
go.
Thank you.
One more thing, on April 17th, for folks who are in Seattle, we're doing like an open community shoot. So if you just want to be in that week's video, it'll be here in China.
should-
I don't
we
know if
should,
this will go out.
Yeah, our
by then.
scheduling might not.
But we can announce it on our social media.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
If you post about it on your Instagram, I will make sure to repost it. So
Yay.
go for that. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.